Andy Greenberg is a senior writer at Wired. He interviewed Julian Assange in 2010. He also covered the Sony hack. He joins me now from New York. Good to see you, Andy. Cyber is the threat, but should we make a distinction between, if you like, legitimate news searching, journalism, and, frankly, the Sony hack, which arguably did not give out much by way of journalist values?
Well, if we're talking about WikiLeaks, which I think we are, then the kind of innovation of Julian Assange was to cut this forensic trail between the source and the journalist. That opened up a new world of whistleblowing that has really changed journalism. In fact, it's changed the whole kind of idea of leaking information, allowed it to become entirely anonymous, protected by cryptographic tools that didn't exist a decade or a generation ago. But at the same time, it also means that the journalist not only doesn't know the source, but can't know the source in a way that means that hackers can feed information to journalists just as easily as a whistleblower, a kind of principled insider. And that has become a norm in journalism, that now all sorts of reporters do accept information from hackers. We saw this in the 2016 election very, very clearly.
But we also have seen in recent years an example of the opposite. Let's think of the Panama Papers, where you had a massive dump of documents from the Panama law firm, but they were curated, they were investigated, and in some cases, important information was redacted. Isn't that the correct way for journalists to use hacked documents?
Well, I am not a journalistic ethicist, and I wouldn't want to judge who is doing this right and wrong. But I would observe that WikiLeaks created this technology, but I've always thought that Julian Assange, and in fact, when I interviewed him in 2010, he told me he brought a kind of hacker mentality to this act of journalism in the sense that he used technological tools nobody ever had before. But he was also a recipient of these leaks who had very radical views about transparency and anti-secrecy that led him to essentially publish practically everything that he had, starting with the cable gates, the State Department's cables in 2010. He did start to redact heavily to curate. But now we see dozens of newsrooms around the country and around the US and the world start to adopt the same cryptographic tools that WikiLeaks used to have this anonymous inbox, but they also have a kind of journalistic curation. They don't simply publish whatever comes in en masse. They build stories out of it, like journalists always have.